The month of Muharram holds a sacred place in the Islamic calendar. It is one of the 4 sacred months mentioned in the Quran, and its significance stretches back to the very origins of human history. But within this blessed month, certain days carry a weight that no passage of time has been able to diminish. The 2nd of Muharram is one such day, a day that marks the beginning of a journey that would become the most powerful moral and spiritual event in the history of Islam. On this day, in the year 61 of the Hijri calendar, Imam Hussein ibn Ali, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, arrived at the plains of Karbala, in what is now modern-day Iraq. He had left the holy city of Mecca with his family, his companions, and a mission that was not about power, not about conquest, but about conscience. He came to Karbala not by choice of comfort, but because the forces of the Umayyad ruler Yazid ibn Muawiyah had intercepted his path and surrounded him on all sides. To understand what the 2nd of Muharram truly means spiritually, we must understand who Hussein was and what he represented. He was not merely a political figure, he was the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the cousin and son-in-law of the Prophet. His mother was Fatima al-Zahra, the beloved daughter of the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet himself had said, according to authentic hadith recorded in Tirmidhi and others, that Hussein is from me and I am from Hussein. This was not just a statement of lineage, it was a declaration of spiritual continuity. Hussein carried within him the essence of the prophetic message. When Hussein departed from Mecca toward Kufa in Iraq, he left behind a letter. He left behind a declaration of purpose. He said, and his words have echoed across 14 centuries, that he did not rise out of arrogance or desire for mischief. He rose to seek reform in the community of his grandfather. He wanted to command what is right and forbid what is wrong. These words, recorded in historical sources including Tarikh al-Tabari, one of the most comprehensive early Islamic histories, are not the words of a rebel. They are the words of a man who understood that silence in the face of injustice is itself a form of injustice. The 2nd of Muharram, then, is the day when this moral stand became physical. When Hussein and his small caravan reached Karbala, they were forced to stop. The land, the dry and unforgiving desert of Karbala, became the stage for what historians, Muslim scholars, and even non-Muslim thinkers across centuries have called one of the greatest human dramas ever witnessed. The spiritual message of this day begins with the concept of choice. Hussein had options. He could have pledged allegiance to Yazid and been left in peace. He could have retreated into quiet life. But he understood something profound. That when a person in authority uses that authority to corrupt truth, to normalize oppression, and to silence justice, then every soul that remains silent becomes complicit. The Prophet Muhammad had said, as recorded in hadith, that the best form of jihad is to speak a word of truth in the face of a tyrannical ruler. Hussein embodied this hadith not with words alone, but with his very life. There is a profound teaching embedded in the geography of this event. Karbala, in Arabic, contains 2 root words, karb, meaning grief or sorrow, and bala, meaning trial or affliction. The scholars of language and spirituality have long reflected on this. The land itself seemed to carry the prophecy of what was to come. And yet, from grief and trial comes clarity. It is in our moments of deepest hardship that we discover what we truly believe, what we truly value, and who we truly are. This is why the 2nd of Muharram speaks not only to Muslims, but to the human conscience at large. It is a reminder that principled resistance to injustice is an eternal human obligation. Mahatma Gandhi once reflected on Imam Hussein and wrote that he learned from Hussein how to achieve victory while being oppressed. Charles Dickens, in his writings, pointed to the sacrifice at Karbala as an example of moral courage that surpasses many historical acts of heroism. These reflections are not coincidental. They point to something universal in what Hussein stood for. The 2nd of Muharram also teaches us about community and loyalty. When Hussein arrived at Karbala, he was surrounded not only by family, but by companions who had chosen to stand with him, fully aware of the danger they faced. Some of them, when night fell and Hussein gave them the option to leave under the cover of darkness, refused. They said they would not see the morning without him. This loyalty was not blind loyalty to a person. It was loyalty to a principle, to truth, to the covenant that binds a believer to justice. In the Islamic tradition, There is the concept of wilaya, which can be translated as guardianship, love, and allegiance, a bond between the believer and the guided leadership that carries the trust of the prophetic mission. The events of Karbala, beginning with this second day of Muharram, are seen as the ultimate test of that bond. And those who passed the test did so not because they were fearless, but because their faith was stronger than their fear. Spiritually, this day invites every person to ask themselves a question that is timeless and deeply personal. What would you do when the choice is between comfort and conscience? When standing for what is right costs you something real, your safety, your reputation, your stability, what do you choose? This is the question Karbala asks across every generation, and it is a question that does not expire. There is also a dimension of grief in the spiritual message of the 2nd of Muharram that deserves reflection. Islam is a tradition that does not ask its followers to suppress emotion or to perform a cold and distant piety. The Prophet himself wept. He wept for the loss of loved ones. He wept out of awe before God. And the tradition of mourning for Imam Hussein, practiced by millions across the world, is rooted in the recognition that grief for a righteous soul is itself a form of spiritual connection. It is a way of saying that what happened at Karbala mattered, that the blood of the innocent matters, that injustice, no matter how long ago it occurred, is not forgotten. The Quran itself speaks in Surah Al-Imran about those who are killed in the way of God as not being dead, but living, receiving sustenance from their Lord. The martyrs of Karbala, in this theological understanding, are not figures of the past locked in history. They are spiritually present, and their message continues to nourish the souls of those who reflect upon it. As we mark the 2nd of Muharram, we are invited to engage in a form of remembrance that is not passive. It is not simply nostalgia or ritual. It is an active moral engagement with the values that Imam Hussein carried to Karbala. It is a commitment, renewed in each generation, to refuse the normalization of injustice, to speak when speaking is difficult, to stand when standing costs something, to choose the harder right over the easier wrong. The journey to Karbala began on the 2nd of Muharram, but in a deeper sense, the journey that Karbala represents never ended. It continues in every moment when a human being faces a choice between truth and convenience. And in that continuing journey, the example of Hussein ibn Ali remains a lantern, steady, illuminating, and incapable of being extinguished.